Hello, Planted members. How are you guys doing? It is Friday morning and it is, my goodness, a little bit later than normal. It's right around 11:15 and wanted to go live. I'm inside today because, you know, I've got the loud blowers in the backyard. But okay, I wanted to talk to you guys about a couple things about the March shipment. Most of you should have gotten your box by now. I think a few of you are still waiting for yours, and they've been kind of being shipped out all week. We've got some new Planted Wall customers are coming on board, which is exciting. So welcome them into the community. And what I'm just going to kind of walk through a little bit of a repeat from last week, but I want to walk through some of the details around harvesting, around amendments, amending your soil, some of the programming going on, talk a little bit about pest and disease management, because these are all kind of the pillars of planting that we always want to be watching out for. And once we get those under our belt, we are off to the races in terms of growing and having success. So, and always, you know, I also want to just always tell people, remember guys, we're dealing with nature, so many variables in terms of climate and weather and just unique microclimates and conditions in your house and so in your home environment. And so, you know, there's a lot of things that can happen. So you might have a month or two where it's great, and then you might have a month where some things happen, and that's okay. That's kind of part of growing, and this is why we have this monthly subscription. We just keep sending you plants and soil and amendments and everything that you need. One thing to keep in mind, if you do have a plant that just does not make it, because, you know, maybe it was shipped, it had transplant shock and it never quite recovered, please know that we do replace those. So what you'll want to do is you want to reach out to Janie at plantedplaces.com or inquiries at plantedplaces.com and just let us know what's happened. It's a great teaching moment too for you, so you can kind of find out what actually did happen. Sometimes it's completely out of your control, and sometimes maybe, I don't know, maybe it was something that happened in your unique circumstance, and that's kind of what we walk through and we know for next time. So let me go through right now in terms of what it is that I want to talk first just about amendments, because this is the first time that we are going to, sorry, I keep having text flying out of my phone. It's driving me nuts. Okay, this is the first time that we're sending you worm castings, because it's also the first time that you are going to be replenishing your seedlings. So we got you for Planted Wall. You guys have been doing this always, and so you know you're kind of pros at this by now. But this is the first time we're actually sending you worm castings, okay? And we're really stepping up our work in the regeneration of the soil and really teaching you about what you need to be doing. The more we do this kind of stuff, adding worm castings and mycorrhizal fungi, the less you have to replace your soil or take it out to compost it, because it will help reboost it and it will help get that microbial activity going. Let me talk quickly about the worm castings. I realize this is kind of backwards for you when you look at it, but we're going to be using 1 tablespoon of worm castings per seedling in terms of in your pot. Now you're only doing this if you're replenishing. Okay, so if you are replenishing, you're using worm casting. If you're just planting a brand new plant, you don't need the worm castings. Okay, the soil is already absolutely supercharged with everything that you need, all that organic matter. What happens is after you've been growing a plant, here we go, here's a bok choy, it has bolted. This is coming out when I replenish this weekend, and the soil's gonna be a little depleted of nutrients. So I want to get those worm castings into the soil along with the fertilizer mix we send you, so that it can start rejuvenating, regenerating that organic matter, the nutrients for the plant. And one thing to know, why are worm castings so important? They're kind of like the perfect amendment, organic matter amendment. Worm castings have over 60 minerals, vitamins, trace elements that the roots need to basically have a healthy root soil environment, so it can take up all those vitamins and minerals. It also has a lot of microorganisms, microbial organisms in the worm castings that actually come from the gut of the worm. Sounds a little weird, and that is very important because that helps protect the plant from disease and pests, okay? That bacteria, it's actually beneficial microorganisms, very important. Those microorganisms also break down the matter that's in the soil, the organic matter in the soil that allows the roots to bring up the nutrients that it absorbs and brings up. Okay, it kind of helps transfer that organic matter into a material the roots can take up. So this stuff is really important. Another really important thing about worm castings is it has a perfect pH of around 7.0. You want your soil to be 6.8 to 7.0 pH to be growing leafy greens and vegetables. That's the perfect soil chemistry pH, and worm castings have that, so it helps balance and neutralize out that soil. Very, very important. But again, you're only using worm castings if you're replenishing your seedlings. Okay. For brand new seedlings, we're going to be using the mycorrhizal fungi, okay? And the mycorrhizal fungi, that's 1 teaspoon per seedling. And I showed last week on the Test Garden Live, I actually did a demonstration to show you how you replenish a seedling with the worm castings and the fertilizer mix, and also the mycorrhizal fungi, okay? Mycorrhizal fungi is used all the time. New seedling, replacement seedling. Anytime you're putting a new seedling in there, you're using the mycorrhizal fungi. Mycorrhizal fungi is very important because it actually helps extend the reach of the roots. And it takes up to 75% more of the nutrients for the roots because it's extending the reach of those roots out into the soil. So that's a very important, it's a very symbiotic relationship with the roots. So that's a great amendment that you need to have as well. And these are things that are going to keep your soil going and healthy and keep the plant growing and being happy and healthy. Okay, very, very important so that you're continuing to have plants grow fast, plants give you lots of yield. We are still in cold temperatures in Northern California. So one thing, don't worry. I know it gets cold at night, but please know that these are seedlings that can handle the cold, okay? 40-degree weather is not going to hurt these seedlings. And in fact, it kind of hardens them a little bit, which makes them a little crispier. And that's just them protecting. It's like protecting their flesh, if you will, from the cold. But it's perfectly fine for these seedlings. One of the things else that I want to talk about is, while we're talking about worm castings, worms. Now that we've got some rains, it's kind of rainy time of year, you might see some earthworms or some worms just kind of, sometimes they come out in the rain. Do not hesitate to pick up that worm and put it in the soil. That is the best thing that you can do for soil, is to put those worms in the soil. It also protects them from the birds that want to get them. So, because they're hiding in your soil in the container, and the birds won't see them. But that's really important. So do that, okay? Because you're really helping the plant when you do that. Okay. Let's talk watering. If you have a planted wall system and it's raining a lot, please don't think that means your pots are fine. You still want to go out there and check that. You still want to go ahead and you just kind of put your finger into the soil and see if it's wet beneath the surface. Because what happens when it's on the wall is you got to realize the water is coming through the top here and it's flowing. So when it's raining, the leaves are getting wet, but the roots may not necessarily be getting wet. And so that's important. You want to make sure that you might have to water even though it's raining. Not as often. When it's colder, the soil's not drying out as much, but you might need to still water. So don't completely ignore them just because it's raining. And then if you've got the container pots and it's raining a ton and your pots are just sitting out there, check the water. If you feel like if it's over wet, you might want to just kind of cover them up a little bit to let them dry out a little bit. Just kind of meaning cover up, kind of get them out of the way of the rain, and just on a back porch or some type of overhang so that they can kind of dry out a little bit. It is important that oftentimes, especially with the herbs, you want to water them, and then you want that soil to kind of dry out a little bit. That's important, okay? You don't want it completely saturated all the time. The herbs will not like that, and you will see that in discoloration of the leaves. You might even get a little bit of root rot. Herbs will not thrive if the water's constantly wet. For leafy greens, they like to be, kind of stay moist, right? You don't want them to be overly watered. That's very important because you can get root rot, and that's basically just the soil's not really able to, the air's not able to flow, the roots aren't really able to breathe and respirate, and so as a result, root rot occurs. They just kind of, they can't breathe, they kind of die. Also, it opens up more for disease, and that's kind of where the root rot comes in. So you just want to make sure that you're watering and you're letting things dry out, and then you're watering again, okay? So that's important. Let's talk harvesting. Harvesting of your plants. A lot of this is kind of repeat, but I know that a lot of people don't necessarily see this all the time. So I like to repeat because, you know, if you're anything like me, you kind of got to hear it a lot. So let's talk about it here. Bok choy. Bok choy is one of those plants, especially for planted box. The plant, you know, if you're growing in the containers, chances are you got a bok choy back in November. Bok choy lasts a long time in a pot, especially in the winter months when it doesn't grow as fast. But if it is doing this, it has gone to seed, it has bolted, I need to take this out. I need to take this out of the pot and I need to harvest the entire plant, okay? And what is happening here, you can see this has been bolting for a while, a lot of different flowers coming out. But, you know, if I wanted to, I could wait and kind of create seeds from this. But I'm going to go ahead and take this whole thing, this whole plant out, and I'm going to harvest all the leaves, and I'm going to have a ton of greenery. Look at all the leaves there. But if let's imagine this was not bolted. I did not have... it was just a bunch of leaves growing. If I were to harvest, remember we like to graze, we call this grazing. When you're growing in containers and you're growing on walls, you want to harvest frequently. You don't want to harvest the entire plant. So you want to take a couple leaves at a time, and you always want to leave at least 2 or 3 leaves on the plant. And you need that so that it can regenerate and continue to grow quickly. If it doesn't have enough leaf coverage, the photosynthesis will not happen and it won't grow as fast. So that's important. You don't just cut it all off. You always want to keep 2 or 3 leaves. So I wanted to show you this plant. This is a romaine. It's kind of like a baby romaine. And what I can do with this plant is I definitely can harvest right now. I could probably take 3 or 4 leaves from this because there's plenty of leaves here. But if I wanted the leaves to get bigger, I could just leave it alone and the leaves will continue to grow up and they will get tall. But if I want to just kind of, you know, eat them as little baby romaines, I could do that right now too. It's completely your option how you want to do it, okay? So, but again, on this one, I've got plenty of leaves. I can harvest it, but I want to keep probably 3, you know, 2 minimum. On this one, there's a plenty. I think I'd keep like 4 or 5 leaves on here and just take maybe 3 or 4 leaves. And so I would be taking them from multiple pots is how I would be doing that. And that's one thing why growing on a planted wall is so great is you have so many pots that you've got a lot of different plants to choose from so that you're constantly being able to harvest. Let's show you the Mizuna. This Mizuna, same thing. This thing is now bolting. It needs to come out. Now with Mizuna and with arugulas, you can be cutting back. So right here is the stalk. See, it's thicker. I would cut it all the way down here at the bottom if I wanted to prevent that bolting, and they would continue to grow a little bit. Mizunas, arugulas, you can do that. Even spinach, you can do that. You can kind of cut back the stalks that are trying to flower, but you want to watch the taste. If the taste starts deteriorating, getting too bitter, then you want to take the whole plant out. I'm going to take this whole plant out. Now that we've got a new crop of seedlings, I'm going to replace this plant for sure. Okay, and the other thing I wanted to show you was, I wanted to show you an arugula here. So this is a multi-seeded arugula. It's actually big enough I can start harvesting it now. But what I might do is I'm going to thin this out so that I can have less seedlings. Like right now I've got, if I count here, I've got probably about 5 or so seedlings in here. I'm going to take out 2 seedlings, and I only have 2 or 3 seedlings in here. That will allow the plant to grow and get bigger. So there's not so many seedlings, so many roots competing for the soil. I'm going to do that because I want my leaves to get a little bigger. Or I could just keep all those seedlings in there and you're just going to get smaller leaves. Okay, so that's the same thing with the Swiss chard. You got Swiss chard. If you're growing in the containers, you got Swiss chard this month, and that's another multi-seeded plant that you can grow multiple seeds in that pot, or you can take them all out and just have 1 seedling, and it will get to be very big. You'll get really big leaves, and that's kind of the difference. Small leaves, big leaves. Okay, so that is kind of covering all of that, and I think the last thing I want to tell you guys about is just real quick on the programming, because we got a lot of cool things going on. This month, we are doing salad dressings, and you would have gotten this in your box, and what you'll do is, if you'll notice, as you know, we always send you a card with the QR code, okay? And here's the QR code. You want to just take a picture of this with your phone, okay? And it will bring up a web page. And the web page gives you all the information for the month, okay? It gives you all the information in terms of any trainings. This month, we give you some detail on how to replenish seedlings, how you use the worm castings. We talk a little bit about crop rotation and the importance of planting different plants in different pots. You know, if you're growing a romaine in one pot, you don't want to put another romaine in there. Maybe you put arugula in there. You want to be rotating the types of plants you grow each time you replenish. We talk a little bit about that. We talk always about the program, and we give you the replays to the yoga classes, and we give you replays to any cooking classes. Last night, I had a great interview with Robin, our Happy Food chef, and we talked about dressings. And what was really cool about it is we really talked about the fundamentals of dressings and how you think about it, and how you can really tailor those dressings to different types of food, different ethnic types of foods that you might be eating. If you want to be going a little bit on the Asian side, you know, you're bringing in your toasted sesame oil, and you're bringing in your rice vinegars, and you're bringing in cilantro. We talked about what kind of herbs and leafy greens are you using for different types of dressings you want to make. So I highly recommend watching that interview. It was really helpful. And this month we have an Asian salad dressing, and we are introducing that with our fire cider, which is kind of a fun product that we found, kind of immunity booster. It's got a lot of ginger in it, and that is a product that we sourced from another company, and we created a dressing out of that. So that's for you, and that's in there as well. Next month is going to be all about making different types of teas with what we're growing. So again, all about health, all about how we're getting those leafy greens in there. Also next month, you guys, we are going to be introducing tomatoes. We're going to be sending you guys tomatoes to grow. So I know a lot of you have been asking about that for a while, and this is the season. It was always, a lot of people kind of asking about basil too. Little too early for basil. We'll be introducing that probably in May. But you definitely want your warmer temperatures when you're growing basil and tomatoes and peppers for that matter. So that's all coming up over the next few months. Okay? Thanks, everybody. Please remember, especially when you go to the page here, there is a link for Planted MD, or just remember the email address, plantedmd@plantedplaces.com. If you have any questions about your plants, please take a picture, send it in to Planted MD, and you can get personalized, customized feedback. You know, if you're growing on a wall and you've got questions about your irrigation, or there's something strange going on with the plant, you don't know what it is, take a picture, send it in, ask your question, you'll get personalized response. And then we save those responses and we put those up for everybody to see. Okay? Very good. Thanks so much, guys. And last thing, next week, I'm going to be doing a spring training, and it's going to be a 3-part series. And I'm really going to be covering kind of the basics of growing in containers and on planted wall, kind of the planted way of how we do it. And I'm going to be doing it soup to nuts, covering a lot. And then we're going to be doing it in 3 series. So I'm going to be talking about the pillars of growing. Then I'm going to be talking a lot about kind of nutrition and food, and how do we get what we're growing into the food that we're making. Okay, that's super important. We need to be able to consume this, and how do we make it so that our kids will eat it? That's very important. And then the last thing is we have a fun series, kind of a yoga series at the end of that. So we're kind of wrapping that whole thing about health and wellness and healthy living in the Planted membership. Okay, very good, guys. Take care. Enjoy your weekend, and stay warm. Bye-bye.